I'd like to call to order the Oxnard City Council and the Oxnard Housing Authority for April the 6th, 2021. Roll call and posting of the agenda.
Councilwoman Basile,
Here.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Here.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Here.
Councilmember Perello,
Here.
Councilmember Turan,
Here.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Here.
The amended agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall Bulletin Board on March 25th, 2021.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now, please help me salute our flag, Pledge of Allegiance, and a moment of silence for all the unfortunate people that we've lost in the United States and some people over in D.C. today. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
United States of America,
and to
and the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation
under God, indivisible, with
Indivisible,
liberty and justice for
with
all.
liberty.
Thank you. So the first item that we have this evening is going to be a presentation and proclamation designating the month of April as Sexual Assault and Child Abuse Awareness. And my understanding that Sergeant Scott Aaron with the Oxnard Police Department is going to be accepting this proclamation. So I'd like to read it at this time. And after I finish reading it, we have a speaker by the name of Zachary that'd like to make some comments. So I'm going to start at this time. And this is again a proclamation, Sexual Assault and Child Abuse Awareness Month, April 2021. April is designated as Sexual Assault and Child Abuse Awareness Month. And whereas sexual assault and child abuse are crimes that affect all races, cultures, social demographics, and has a profound impact on families and the community. And where children that grow up in violent homes are believed to be abused and neglected at a higher rate than on the national average. And whereas only a coordinated community effort can put a stop to this atrocious crimes, and where sexual assault and Child Abuse Awareness Month provides an excellent opportunity for residents to learn more about preventing sexual assault and child abuse, and to show support for the numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy services and assistance to survivors. And whereas the City of Oxnard Police Department and community-based organizations are in a position to provide education, information, services to assist survivors in believing that they have the right to feel safe and live free from violence at home and in the community. And where we recognize the survivors of abuse whose courage inspire all of us. We recommit our offering to helping a hand to those in need, and we remind them that they are not alone. And where we must continue to stand alongside advocates, survivors, service providers, law enforcement, and our criminal justice system as a whole, offenders accountable, and provide care and support to survivors during the darkest moments of their lives. Where the City of Oxnard Police Department urges all residents to take a stand against sexual assault and child abuse by raising awareness about these issues and resources available to survivors seeking to escape abuse. And whereas we continue our efforts to end violence in our home, schools, and also in our communities. Therefore, I, John Zaragoza, Mayor of the City of Oxnard, do hereby proclaim April 2021 as Sexual Assault and Child Abuse Awareness Month in the City of Oxnard, and encourage all residents to participate in programs and outreach efforts towards educating and supporting those who are survivors of sexual assault and child abuse. In witness thereof, I here set my hand and cause the great seal of the City of Oxnard to be affixed at this 6th day of April 2021. And I think we have Scott Aaron is going to share a couple of words from the Oxnard Police Department.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Senior Detective Mike Manma has a few words. I'd just like to thank you and say it's an honor to serve our community. I'd like to thank a few of our partners at the Family Justice Center, Children and Family Services, the Autism Society Interface, and the Coalition. Thank you.
Okay, Scott. What? Go ahead, Scott. Oh, you've done? Okay, thank you, Scott. My understanding also that we have a representative from the DA's office, is that correct? That might want to share a couple of words? Mhm.
Ms. Hurd?
Yes,
Hi, thank you. Would you
You-
like to say a few words?
absolutely. I'm Cher Hurd. Thank you, Mayor Zaragoza and members of the council. We appreciate you welcoming us tonight. And I actually represent the Realtor community. I'm the president of the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors. And part of
Ms.
what,
Hurd?
yes,
Share,
My,
I'm-
my apologies.
Yes.
You are with the Association of Realtors?
I am. I'm the
You are-
president of the association. Yes.
yeah, share,
My apologies. You're on item number 2?
share,
Yes.
can you accept our apologies? Give me 2 minutes and we'll be right back to you. Because
Oh, absolutely, John. Thank you,
Thank
Mayor.
you so much. And nice to see you anyway. I haven't seen you for a
It's
long
good
time.
to see you too.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Give me about 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. So then we have a speaker on this item, and it's Jeff Zachary, excuse me. Zachary? Madam Clerk, no,
I'm sorry. Zachary is not available at the moment.
not available. Okay, okay, then now, sure, hold on. I'm going to share this information, then I'll let you share a couple of words. Okay, our next item is, this is the proclamation for Fair Housing Month, April 2021. Whereas April 10th, 2019 marks the 53rd anniversary of the passage of a Fair Housing Act, number 13 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, which enunciates a national policy for fair housing without discrimination and encourages fair housing opportunities whereas the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors and the Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team is committed to highlighting the Fair Housing Act, by continuing to address discrimination in our community, to support programs that will educate the public about the right to equal housing opportunities, and to plan partnership efforts and other organizations to help assure everyone of their rights of fair housing. Whereas the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics commits all realtors to provide equal professional service without discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or familial status, handicap, sexual orientation, gender identity, and national origin. In order for I, John C. Zaragoza, Mayor of the City of Oxnard, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2021 as Fair Housing Month in the City of Oxnard, and ask all residents of our community to join in affirming our obligation and commitment to fair housing opportunities and civil rights to all. In witness thereof, I have set my hand and caused the great seal of the City of Oxnard to be affixed today, the 6th day of April 2021. Cher, your turn.
Thank you so much, Mayor Zaragoza and members of the council. That was very nice, and we're very pleased to be here today, and we appreciate being welcomed into the council chambers. As I said earlier, I'm the president of the local association of just over 2,000 members here in Ventura County. I represent our local realtors on behalf of Fair Housing Month and all that it represents to us. It makes me so happy to report that to the National Association of Realtors and all realtors nationwide, it's really important to us that fair housing regulations are followed and promoted in our communities. The Fair Housing Act regulates equal access to housing for buyers and sellers. And for the realtor, this includes providing equal professional services without regard to the race, color, religion, gender, disability, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity of any client, prospective client, customer, or any resident of any community. For clients, this means equal treatment and representation in the acquisition of a home and that first step in achieving the American dream, which, as you know, is alive and well here in Oxnard.
Absolutely.
The Realtor Code of Ethics means we are pledged and committed to ensure fair housing for all, and so much so that the National Association of Realtors just took an action that amended and enhanced the language of our Code of Ethics to read in Article 10-5, realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, slurs against members of those protected classes. So we took that extra step to root out any type of discrimination or hateful speech within our community. And we're very proud of that. This makes it very clear where we stand with regard to equality.
And what line?
The Department of Housing and Urban Development has defined 4 different housing issues to be considered in the assessment process of communities. And these are segregation, concentrated areas of poverty, access to opportunity in such things as education and transportation, and disproportionate housing needs, meaning that there are disparities in the proportion of members of a protected class experience that high cost burden of purchasing. We ask your assistance in continuing to be engaged in, address, and stay informed of these issues, and to continue to work to support these HUD initiatives. An integral part of fair housing is what the mayor had talked about earlier in the form of protecting the public from fraud. And we started in 2006, the DA locally, the Real Estate Fraud Advisory Team, and we work very closely with the district attorney to prevent, detect, and report fraudulent activities in our communities. We continue this effort, and we thank you, City of Oxnard, your leaders, and the community members for recognizing the importance of Fair Housing Month and the need to always work together as a community to support these ideals. Thank you so much for all you do. We really appreciate your work, and we appreciate your partnership.
Thank you, Cher. And also we have, I think, Martha Goldane Brown. She's the Director of Government Affairs for the Ventura County Coastal Realtors. Is Martha on?
I
Martha?
am. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to echo Cher's comments. She really carried it for the association, but thank you all for your support, your continued support in working with the Association of Realtors to further fair housing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to share to Cher and Martha that I had the opportunity to be working with the DA's office as a supervisor on the fraud advisory team, which really has helped a lot of individuals, not only in real estate and mortgage and sales and people that are changed their taking abuse of seniors and so forth. And it was really, really a good program that you guys put together for the board, for the community here in Oxnard. So I just want to thank you for that, and also to share with you that here's the proclamation, and it's going to be available tomorrow morning there at City Hall. And if you call Martha or Ludi there at office at 385-7435, 385-7435, and we'll have this for you. And it's an honor to work with you folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. We really appreciate it.
Any council members would like to share any comments at this time? Okay, Perello, Councilman Perello, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the Realtor Board for their kind words, but I'd also like to remind the public, last council meeting, our brand new district attorney mentioned that he's bringing in more people. And one of the heavy issues that he's pounding on is people that have taken advantage of there may people that the language may be a problem. And I believe it's sometimes they're called notanos or notaries, but they're alleging that they're actually legally entitled to do this type of work. And his words were, they've skimmed and taken the life savings of people and taken advantage of people. A credit to that district attorney. And on the other item that we had the ceremonial and I saw Gabriel's hand up on that one, the sexual assault abuse. This is a big deal, ladies and gentlemen. There was some presentation a few weeks back here, and they mentioned that they have found these cases where children are trafficked in this county, not some other, state, some other third world, in this county. And I'm assuming because the city of Oxnard is in this county, they're finding those cases here also. This is a very serious matter. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that tremendously. Councilmember Tehran, you'd like to share a couple of words, or what? We're okay with it.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Perillo, for that. Very quickly, thank you, Ms. Hurd and Ms. Brown. Absolutely very important issues that we're facing here, and when industries and professional groups can also take part in that and really work toward a solution towards this common goal, it really means a lot and it goes a long way. So thank you to the both of you for that. Mr. Mayor, and maybe we can check with the city attorney. I wanted to say something about the previous ceremonial item, but since we're on item 2, I don't want to cause any issues.
I think we can share. Go ahead. Thank you, Cher and Martha, from the on behalf of the city of Oxnard. Thank you for doing your excellent work for the community. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember, go ahead.
Thank you, and I'll be very brief. I just wanted to share regarding the first item about Sexual Assault and Child Abuse Awareness Month. As Councilmember Perillo had mentioned, this is a large issue that many do not talk about, and I've mentioned a number of times, but the beginning of my career started in alcohol and drug treatment for teenagers, for adolescents. And I can say just anecdotally that 90% of my caseload in my career of teenagers had some form of abuse, child abuse or sexual abuse in their history. And many of them suffered from a number of different things as a result of that. And that adverse childhood experience that they had led to a number of risk behaviors or negative behaviors later on in life for them. And it's just very disheartening to see that, and troubling knowing that this is something they will deal with for many years, if not the rest of their lives. So any way that we can create spaces to talk about this issue and prevent it, the better. Or if we know someone who is potentially experiencing abuse, or we suspect is, that we need to say something in order to get them out of that situation or get the help that they need. And so I just want to thank everybody for bringing this item forward again as a proclamation for the month of April. And it's a very important topic. And I just wanted to mention that to folks, that it is a very real topic and it affects young people in very, very deep ways. So thank you again.
And thank you, Councilman. And also that, human trafficking has a lot to do with it also, and some of the kids that are having, or individuals that are having a hard time at home, go on the street, and now they're subject to human trafficking and so forth. And also, again, just to add, Scott, Aaron over at the Oxnard PD, they're having some renderings in front of the Oxnard Police Department today that supporting supporting Child Abuse and Assault Awareness Month, which I want to commend the Oxnard PD for the good work that they do for the community, which is extremely important. And I know that the chief has commended that. Chief, you want to share any 2 words on that? I know that you have some renderings up in front of the police department. Do you want to share a couple of words on that?
Just to repeat what Councilmember Tehran mentioned about how serious this topic is, and what he's saying is actually very, very true. We see like an intergenerational issue with this, is that this abuse and violence tends to get passed on to the next generation. And in many cases, no particular segment of our population is immune to this. Just wanted to say thank you to our family protection unit that's here, the members of the Family Justice Center that are out here today, as well as our other partners in this. Very proud of our family protection unit. They take this very seriously, and they're a very, very hardworking group. So thank you for taking the time to be here tonight and leading the resolution.
Thank you. And please thank the staff. They're doing a good job. Thank you, Chief. Okay, our next item is item D, and this is public comments on items not in the agenda, and we have 4 individuals that'd like to speak on that item. We're going to start with Douglas Portello, followed by Pat Brown. Items not in the agenda.
Mr. Portello. Mr. Portello, please unmute by pressing *6. Douglas Portello.
Okay, so Douglas is not ready. We'll go with Pat Brown, followed by LaSonia Ivory. Pat Brown, 3 minutes.
Miss Pat Brown. Miss Brown, you may.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that a couple of weeks ago, or maybe less, I was driving up Oxnard Boulevard in the middle of the day, and from the 5 Points intersection. Behind me was a big, huge truck trailer rig coming onto Oxnard Boulevard from east, from Woolley Road east. It was coming and making a right-hand turn to come up Oxnard Boulevard. So he was behind me. I get up to 7th Street, and which is just a few blocks up, 7th Street, and at that where the gas station is and such. And there was this car wanting to make a left-hand turn, so they would want to come south on Oxnard Boulevard. There was this truck that had come behind me that had gotten over in the right-hand lane, and they wanted to make a right-hand turn, but they couldn't because of the car in the middle that was waiting for its turn for the light for him to make a right-hand turn. And then to the north, coming south, was another big truck trailer rig that wanted to make a left-hand turn and get into 7th Street east of the boulevard. So I couldn't stay there because of traffic behind me, but I was trying to figure out how in the world they were all going to get through that intersection because it's not nearly wide enough. And then the more I thought about it, after I got home, I got to thinking, wait a minute, 7th Street is not wide enough for the trucks to go in and out and make right-hand, left-hand turns at the same time. You can't have that happening. And obviously, it wanted to happen at that time, but it can't happen because there's not enough room. You would have to take out the gas station or the old supermarket to the north of that intersection in order for there to be room for these trucks to get in and out on 7th Street when they want to make left-hand turns and such. And then I noticed that 5th Street has a similar problem, except that it's wider, but it has the same problem. Somehow or other, we've got the signage up for the trucks that want to come on to Oxnard Boulevard, not to come north on Oxnard Boulevard from Woolley Road, and we've got them sprinkled throughout. And the trucks are just ignoring the signage and just trying to mutilate our streets because they have to come up over curbs and all that kind of stuff and there's just not enough room for them. And so somehow or other we've got to figure out what we got to do about the.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lasagna Ivory, followed by Alicia Parcell.
Miss Ivory.
Greetings to all who are present. My name is Dr. Ivory, and I believe substantive feedback is critical for improvement. I practice this principle whether I'm in a restaurant, fast food drive-through, or department store. I believe that the expectation is for everyone to do their jobs, but that doesn't always happen. With the heightened tension between law enforcement and the Black community, I felt compelled to contact Chief Benetti and now you, the City Council, that Officers Lauren Bowers and Nicholas Zeff, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, I should have gotten the phonetic spelling, handled a hostile situation with one of my sons 2 weeks ago with professionalism, care, and an extreme amount of humanism. While I do believe that their behavior and response should be the norm and the expectation and the standard, we all know that nationwide, that is not being the experience of many Black males around the country. So I wanted to take the time to publicly commend those two officers and the chief and thank him that the story with my son is not one that's been really common in the media or social media. And I think that it was worthy to take the time to call and get on the agenda to make this public. I report bad information and bad service, so I like to do the same when I get great customer service.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
and I appreciate it tremendously. I'm sure that the chief heard that. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Alicia Parcell, please.
Alicia Purcell.
I'm here.
Hi, Ms. Purcell. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, thank you. I'll be brief. Unfortunately, during last week's City Council meeting, during a discussion of a resolution to condemn certain hateful actions, the city manager ironically decided it was a good time to engage in a little hate mongering of his own, and he slandered our city treasurer with a vague and unsupported implication that he's a racist, which is frankly ridiculous. I've never seen or heard Mr. Molina do anything that justifies the city manager's comments last week. The disagreements between the city treasurer and the city manager are about legal questions, and it's wrong to smear Mr. Molina by implying that it's about something as inflammatory and hurtful as racism. Surely the city council expects more professional conduct from a city manager, and it was very disappointing to watch. Mr. Molina did not deserve the treatment he received last week, and I just thought it was important for someone to say so. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just give a quick response. Ms. Purcell, it's on video. People witnessed it live in that exchange between the city treasurer and myself. It's on video. Anyone can go back and review it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is a report from the city manager, and this is an update on COVID-19 from the director.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry. Who's
Turan.
Go ahead.
My apologies. Were we going to try Mr. Partello again to see if he was able to unmute?
Well, we don't have him.
I believe I see him on the list. I'm not sure if he's having technical issues or not, but he was just not able to unmute earlier. I was just throwing it out there.
Douglas, are you on, Partel?
Mr. Partello, can you hear me? Mr. Partello, you can unmute by pressing star
Yes, I
6.
can hear you. I
There you are.
unmuted.
Okay, sir, you have
Okay.
3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Gabe, thanks for that. I was waiting. I don't know, I was having some technical issues or something, but I appreciate that because I definitely would like to speak on this matter. And good evening, Mayor Zaragoza, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, staff, and public. I'd like to speak on the EMS situation that's going on now. I know that the City Council had voted to not renew the joint powers agreement with the county, but apparently it wasn't quite as simple as just a council vote to extract the city from that agreement. The county runs the EMS system, and they are the ones, not any individual city, which has authority to run that system. And so Oxnard went ahead and signed a temporary contract with Ballot Ambulance. At the same time, county went ahead and had a 3-year contract start with Gold Coast, which they have full authority to do. So now we have, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Ballot Ambulance from Oxnard with a contract. And then we have Gold Coast that is, legally and rightfully given a contract for 3 years through the county EMS system. So it's a question now with the 911 response. That is also something under the jurisdiction and control of the county. So I know that there was some talk about Oxnard changing that so that calls could be routed in a way that would be air contracting ambulance service that would receive those calls and fill up. But as it stands, it isn't clear to me, and maybe someone could help clarify this for me, that if there's a call and Gold Coast shows up, and then the ambulance service contracted for Oxnard shows up, who gets the transport? Do they arm wrestle for it? I mean, how does that work? And to just go ahead and make a contract and put that money out there when the issue hasn't really been resolved. And I know there's talk of litigation and going forward with that, but it seems like those issues should be sorted out prior to making a move of going ahead and, making a contract, which is legally binding with the service and billing and all of that, with some of these
Sir, 15 seconds.
Worked out about legal authority and Oxnard's ability to go ahead and make this move. There's still some questions there, and I certainly have some questions because I live here, and we'll be needing to call 911, and how exactly
Your time is up.
Still some unanswered questions as far as that, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is the report of the city manager, and this is a COVID-19 update from the Director of Emergency Services. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're pulling up the slides right now. So the first update with regard to COVID-19, of course, is all over the news starting tomorrow, or actually at right after midnight tonight. Our county is moving up to the orange tier. So that begins tomorrow night. And as you can see on the screen, there are a slew of segments of the economy that are reopening, each of them with very different capacities in terms of how many customers they can accommodate. So I'm not going to read all of these, just recommend that everyone look at, again, this information is available at the state public health website, the county's website, as well as the city's website. All this information is readily available. You want to find out if you are the business owners, to be clear about the capacities for your industry, as well as if you are the patrons or the customers, you want to know ahead of time. I do want to highlight in terms of offices, indoor offices with modifications, COVID modifications, are also open, but interestingly, they continue to recommend, or it says telework is still encouraged. Again, there's a lot of the economy that is reopening starting tomorrow with certain percentages of capacity and with specific COVID accommodations tailored towards each kind of activity. So all that information is available at all the government websites. So having said that, always important to remind everyone that we are still in this pandemic. We are hopefully at the end of the tunnel and seeing the bright light and nearing the end, but we're not there yet. So as always, as you re-engage in these various public activities, please continue to wear a face covering, keep your physical and social distance, continue to wash your hands as often as possible, and to the best that you can, avoid actual gatherings of people outside of your immediate household. Next is the supply of vaccines continues to roll out and incrementally increasing. So we are currently at the availability in terms of eligibility, anyone that's 50 years of age or older. And within 2 weeks, on April 15th, traditional tax day, all Californians age 16 and up will be eligible for receiving the vaccine. So we certainly encourage everyone to do that as soon as your group is eligible. To go along with that, the reminder that we still have the mega vaccine site at our Rose Avenue Clinic, the former Babies R Us store. South Oxnard Public Health Office at Centerpoint Mall is also open. There again is the website for you to make an appointment. Again, even though you're eligible, you need to register and make your appointment. VenturaCountyRecovers.org/vaccine-information. Again, those web addresses are available at the county website, the city's website, as well as the state's public health website. And the appointment registration is available in English and in Spanish here in our county, and I'm sure throughout the state in other languages where needed. The mini site at the South Winds Youth Center, that partnership with Albertsons and Vons continues again this month. They are focused on providing the second dose. So for all the people who received their first dose there, you should be scheduled to get your second dose this month. And we're looking forward and hoping that they will continue that effort next month as the eligibility opens up for more people. We'll keep you posted if that site can continue. Also, the rent relief, that is available now. People need to apply for that. Again, the information is available in English and Spanish, a city's website, as well as the county's. And I just want to point out that the rent assistance is you can apply as a tenant, but also as a landlord. So we hope that as many residents and landlords who are in need of this assistance as possible here in the city of Oxnard, that you pursue these funds that have been set aside for our residents and landlords. One thing to note, the federal government is making available through the FEMA funds relief for funeral expenses. So the federal government will be accepting applications starting next Monday, April 12th. And as soon as we get that information, we'll post it on the city's website. But they are providing funding to help people pay for funerals caused by COVID. So that will become live next week, April 12th. And then our final reminder, we're going to do this at every council meeting. We will begin the street sweeping enforcement, or I should say, more correctly, resume that starting in June. We will spend the rest of April and May notifying our community just so that people get geared up for this again and eventually get used to the fact that you're going to have to move your cars on your posted street sweeping days. So just want to let people know so that it's not a surprise or a shock to anyone. It's been a long year of not doing the street sweeping enforcement. We've only been able to sweep in areas where the actual street sweeper could get down the street near the curb to clean in many neighborhoods because people were either out of work or working at home. We made a decision early on in this pandemic to suspend street sweeping enforcement, but it will resume starting in June. And with that, I will conclude the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Okay, our next item on the agenda is item F, and this is the City Council Housing Authority and other members that'd like to make some brief comments on their activities, past activities, and also any requests any council member might want to place an item in the agenda, future agenda items. And of course, members of the city council, please do not share your 3 minutes additional time. If additional time is needed, let me know. Council members, any comments? Okay. I see Councilman Perello followed by Councilman Madrigal. Perello?
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, again, thank you for all the public comments. I did hear the tape where I believe that what was said was said. Last week, I did ask the district attorney with respect to the hate crimes. And this week, I've been able to get a planned meeting coming forward after the 12th of April. And I greatly appreciate the district attorney. I mean, this is a new relationship. And I really appreciate the willingness to work and address questions of the community. Cannot go without saying, I'm also extremely grateful. A resident of Oxnard stood up at public comment and complimented the work of the city employees. This time it happened to be the police department. Madam, that is a tremendously big thing. People do not say thank you enough, very seldom. And there are a lot of good, honest men and women working for this city, a lot of good, honest men and women working in the city. And there are a lot of things that a simple thank you would go a long way. Because as you listen to public comments, sometimes we get pounded pretty hard. With respect to recent events that have happened in the city of Oxnard and the latest homicide, ladies and gentlemen, if you see something, say something. I had an opportunity to speak with Mayor Zaragoza this morning. He's agreed that whatever we can do to help the Cypress neighborhood to straighten out something and work with the council member that represents that area, we'll do. This should not happen to the Cypress Neighborhood Council or Mrs. White's neighborhood or any neighborhood. And I'm very grateful the mayor has agreed to assist in any manner that he can. I'm grateful for the actions and the activities that the police department has taken. It will probably be in the news shortly about what transpired and what was the high risk involved for our men and women of law enforcement. This has got to, somehow it's got to change in Oxnard. With respect to the question of a member of the public brought up about the ambulance contract. That was a unanimous vote on the ambulance contract. I do understand the county is taking a position, but I think that when a person finds out of all the information available and the differences of opinion, they might have a bit of a difference of opinion. Although Mr. Portello asked some very good questions, and maybe we can get that on the agenda to explain. If a phone call goes out to 911 and we have two ambulance companies over fighting, basically making a living, who's going to get the bill and who's going to get paid? It's a good question, but there's much more to the underlying story. I had an opportunity this morning to listen to KCLU radio. They had a presentation on the housing crisis in California. And it was a statewide call-in. They're talking about after June 1 with the rent and the mortgage issues, the numbers of people that they're expecting to what they call back hop, I believe is the appropriate word, start living in their cars, and how it's going to impact the communities. If they are correct, our city is in for some rough times in that manner. I would recommend if anybody gets a chance to listen to check out KCLU. I believe that they stated the show is taped and you can get it on the radio station. Recently, I've had an opportunity to attend the Ventura Regional Sanitation District meetings and the airport issues. And the airport issues question has come up by some pilots. Due to the recent windstorm damage, the county is requiring that the people that want to repair their airport hangars have to get permits from the county. And once they get those permits have to come to the city to get a second permit from the city. I don't know how the fees are handled. I don't know how that is working, but maybe we can get a presentation from the city of Oxnard, because there were some pilots that were extremely concerned about why this was going on. And again, sometimes people jump to conclusions like it's simply to make money. I do not believe that's what's going on, but if we could get that on the future agenda to clarify it, I'd appreciate it. And Mayor, at your suggestion, if there's something that the person would like on the agenda, the last council meeting, when we've had numerous people come up and say unsafe housing, continually pound on rent control because they live in unsafe housing. Mm-hmm. I'd like that on the agenda, because I did check with my city before this meeting. No one has come forward with any more addresses. Similar situation happened in the past. No one comes forward with addresses. I do understand that if a person comes forward with an address, there is a risk they maybe not have a place to live. There may be an eviction. There's a court process that can handle that. But if we can continually have people come to our podium and tell us we allow unsafe housing in the city of Oxnard, that is a black eye we do not need. And I believe that's an untruthful statement. We do not allow unsafe housing, but we need the public's help. If you see something, say something. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. I did receive my second COVID shot today. No ill effects so far. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not a big deal. Please get your shots.
Very important. Thank you. And we've listened, the city manager listened to your concerns. And thank you so much. Our next speaker is going to be Councilmember Madrigal, followed by Councilwoman Basua, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. This morning, actually, I had the opportunity to go to the Cypress neighborhood. I actually walked down, I believe it's Howell, and I know that there was concerns about sidewalks, and hopefully that's something as a city that we could resolve. I do have issues with, I believe it's Eugene Walk, that little area is closed off. And I guess it doesn't connect to anything, but if that was going to be the original case, then why didn't we just make the entire property a park? And I think a big issue is that there is no connection to any other adjacent neighborhood, that being Squires Drive. So that's a couple of issues down in Cypress. As more and more things are coming up, and this isn't only in my district, but citywide, as I've been receiving emails all weekend long, our alleys are starting to look horrible again, with mattresses, sofas, and trash. And hopefully, it's something that we could keep to a minimum. And, I just, right before this council meeting, I used the 311 app. So hopefully, we could clean up our alleys throughout the city, because I know that they get pretty bad real quickly. Also, last week I did forget to mention that congratulations to former superintendent of the Oxnard School District, Dr. Cesar Morales, as he is the new superintendent of schools here in the county of Ventura. So congratulations to him. I know that he'll do a marvelous job. And I was one last thing. As far as last week, when we had many speakers, some of the speakers, I did get complaints that they weren't able to connect, even though they were hitting *6. But it's something that, we do need to look at as a council. Is it the council's fault? Is it anyone's fault? I think it's a variety of different reasons as to why we get subpar housing in the city. And unfortunately, some landlords do take advantage of a lot of our members in our community. And, I think it's ridiculous that we're over there checking for addresses when we all know that the repercussions that these people would get by giving addresses pretty much will leave them homeless. And, I'm free this week since, we're on spring break. I'll gladly walk with any council member here, and I'll actually show you the subpar apartments in large parts, in many parts in our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And I'd like to get together with you on that item too, if you don't mind. And some of the items that you were sharing about the alleys and the trash and so forth, is some of our priorities that we're going to be looking at pretty closely. So those are very good comments. Thank you, sir. And then we have Councilwoman Basua, followed by Councilmember Teran, and then Mayor Pro Tem. Councilwoman Basua, excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor. thank you to my fellow colleagues for bringing up what happened in the Cypress neighborhood over the weekend. I have been receiving emails and phone calls from people in that neighborhood, and they are very, very concerned regarding the crime activity that has occurred there. And I think that we can all understand and sympathize with the fear within that neighborhood. One of the challenges, of course, that we have is our police department. We all recall, we had budget cuts. And I'm asking my fellow council members that as we go and look into next year's budget, that we restore the services for the police department and even add additional resources to the department that is really needed, because part of us feeling safe is having a police department that has the resources, the personnel, and our support in order to go out to our communities and make a presence there. And right now, the Cypress neighborhood is really, really asking for some of those resources. And I spoke to Chief Benitez earlier today, and he is doing everything in his power that he can in order to support the neighborhoods, not only in Cypress, but everywhere else. And I hope that I will have the support of my fellow council members as we go into next year's budget and try to restore these really, really big assets that we need, which is our police department. We need them back in full force. With that being said, I'm going to make a few comments on some of the challenges in the Cypress neighborhood, sort of the alley that I'm very well aware of. And I'd like to also thank Ashley Golden. She did give me a report of that area and some of the challenges that are being faced in that neighborhood. And I'm hoping that as we again go into our budget cycle, that we can add resources there to try to mitigate some of the issues that is being presented in the Howell Street, specifically that area. It is a big undertaking. I greatly understand that, but it's not impossible. So those are my comments, Mayor. And I hope that together we can do some good for this community that really, really needs it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Councilman Duran, followed by Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to echo what my council colleagues have said regarding the Cypress neighborhood, and I just want to send my condolences to the families and the community members who've been affected by the recent violence. And it's indicative of larger social issues that are happening within our community. And I'm hoping that we can all work together to support the community, but also try and find solutions in ways that it can be addressed. That being said, I just have a couple of quick updates here for neighborhood councils meeting in the coming weeks. The Cal Geisler neighborhood is going to be meeting on April 13th. And I believe that's an election meeting. They're looking for a new vice chair. River Park is having their meeting on April the 22nd. And then as a quick update, last Wednesday, we had our District 2 Town Hall meeting. And it was, I think it was very successful. I've had nothing but great responses from residents and from staff who were in attendance. And I just have to thank the neighborhood council chairs again who helped to plan it. And I really hope that any resident who attended, who doesn't regularly attend the neighborhood council meetings or isn't able to, will get a chance to check them out. If you enjoyed the content of that evening, the neighborhood council meetings are a really regular source for that type of work of interfacing with the city and sharing your concerns and hearing news and updates on what's going on within your community. And so specifically for staff, though, I do want to thank our city manager and our fire chief, Alex Hamilton, our police chief and the assistant chiefs who were there as well, and Emilio Ramirez from housing, and Tatiana Arnouf, our city engineer. And their work was just tireless that evening. They did a great job of answering every question that came in. And I look forward to hearing from residents additionally about what they'd like to do for additional opportunities like this. And the neighborhood council chairs, again, I just want to round it out by saying thank you all again for helping to plan it and promote the event and really give an opportunity for our residents to be heard and get some answers from our city staff. Last two things here. I attended a vigil on Saturday for lives lost from the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. And it was organized by 805 AAPI Solidarity and We Belong 805 and Social Justice Fund Ventura County. And it was very well put together and organized. And also in attendance were my fellow councilmember Madrigal, as well as Supervisor Ramirez and school board trustees from the Rio School District and from Oxnard Elementary School District. I was also happy to see the Ventura County Star and Tri-County Century had sent reporters in person to view and cover the event. And it's just great to see the media out there in person, even in times of COVID, working to promote these or cover these events that happen for the community. I want to thank everybody who put it together. It was a really great event. And it was just great to hear voices of people from our community and hear how they've been affected and really look at how we can offer solutions to addressing the issue of violence and hate and racism. Last thing is the 311 app, as Councilmember Madrigal had mentioned. I keep saying it, but I can't say it enough. Please use the app. I have also noticed items ending up in alleys and on streets again. And on Saturday, this past Saturday, my kids and I went for a walk. We go through the walks in our alleys and we'll report things just as we walk through from the phone. And I reported items on Saturday in a number of alleys. They were all picked up the following Monday, the day after Easter. And so they got on it right away that morning and they were picked up pretty much the same day they came back into back to work. So I appreciate the folks who work at 311 and thank them for their attention on those matters. Just pushing the members of the public, please use the app or call the city to let them know that there's items that need to be picked up. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That's my updates.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to let members of the council know that I was approached by the Central Coast Division of the California League of Cities asking if I might be interested in their group. And I took a little look at the duties and obligations, and I said I would consider being involved, and I got elected to the second vice chair position on the Central Coast Committee. So I'm hoping this will be a positive move forward, but it's another thing that we as council members do to help represent our community on different levels. And this obviously is part of the statewide commission. So it should be an interesting experience. This is in addition to all the transportation stuff that I still do. Tomorrow we're having both a LoSAN meeting and a Gold Coast Transit meeting. Because of a conflict, I can only make the Gold Coast Transit meeting, but just so that people know that we all continue to do what we do on behalf of our community, even though there's a pandemic occurring, and we try and make the best of it and move forward. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Pirelli, have additional comments?
Yes, please, Mayor. Thank you very much for letting me add on this. I would love to join the mayor and Councilmember Madrigal in walking those areas, but I cannot let this opportunity go without saying it. If we know as a council member or as a citizen of areas that are unsafe and we don't make a phone call, what does it say about us? We are pounded that we have unsafe living conditions in the city of Oxnard. And we are pounded that if we leave these situations go, the people live in situations that are unfit for people to live in. But if we work to clean this up, we are told we are driving people into homelessness. I'd like it on the agenda. We had a past mayor that tried to do various things in a specific area, South Winds neighborhood. It didn't work out as well as expected, directing code enforcement to go in those areas. There are things that we cannot just keep talking about and kicking the can down the road and say, I see it, but look, the military thing about look, but don't tell. That's got to stop. If some area of our city has people that are living in unsafe conditions, none of our city can walk around with their head held high. None of our council can walk around with their head held high. The ladies and gentlemen on this council, none of us can do that. And if we know that there are things wrong and we don't say anything, we need to look in the mirror. And with respect to the 311, the council is absolutely right. But I've asked in the past, do we have employees adopting routes back and forth to work where they can call 311? I totally agree. When you make a call to 311, it makes a difference. But people are dumping more and more stuff in the hours. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for letting me exceed my previous time.
Thank you, but I'm with you that unsafe conditions are not acceptable, number one. And it's a health and safety issue, it's not violating anybody's rights. If it's unsafe and unhealthy and unsafe, that's another issue. Thank you for sharing. And I have a couple of items I'd like to share. First of all, I want to, two hands up, I'm sorry. Let me see. Basua, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Basua and Madrigal, okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, I want to
Thank you.
just kind of piggyback on what Councilmember Perello said about these unsafe conditions. Yes, they exist, and they are everywhere within our city, not only in our city, but they're everywhere within this country. But there is an unintended consequences that happens when these are reported. And this is why people don't report them, but they do complain. And I think it would be a great agenda item in order for us as a council to discuss the challenges that are being faced by these families that live in these kind of conditions. And I will tell you what happens. What happens is they will tell on a landlord, the landlord will kick them out, and now they're homeless. And where are we as a society going to put them next? In another unit that, again, is in substandard conditions. And I see this all the time. So I really think it's a good topic of conversation for us as council members to have, but we really need to bring ideas and whether or not policy can be made in order to assist. Because if we're just going to talk about it and have no action, it does us no good. It really does. So I just doesn't. So those are my thoughts. And thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak again.
Before we go up,
So thank you, council member. And this
Yeah.
is turning into a discussion that's
Right.
not on the agenda. So we will put that on a future agenda so that it can be fully discussed with all the voices heard and the public able to participate as well.
I was going to share that, but thank you for intervening. Council Madrigal.
I'll stop. I'll just let it be. I'll talk to Councilman Perello personally.
But we have very, very good comments, and the city attorney is correct. We'll put that in a future agenda. That's really important for all of us. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to share a couple of items too. First of all, I know that I just want to thank Councilmember Tehran for the District 2 Town Hall meeting that he had the other day, which is excellent. There's a lot of participation by 4 primary agency directors of our police, our housing and our streets, but it's an excellent presentation, and I believe that potentially that maybe all of the neighborhoods can have those type of town hall meetings, and I just want to commend Councilmember Tehran for putting that together, which excellent program. Before I can, Councilmember, you want to share something else before I continue?
Thank you, Mayor. My apologies for interrupting. I was writing down my list of everyone. I left out the mayor, and we also had Supervisors Lavere and Ramirez there that evening as well. So thank you for the reminder on that, and thank you so much for coming out as well and participating.
Thank you, because I was going to share that too. We have the 2 supervisors with us, but thank you anyway. So it was really, really great. Additionally, I just want to thank, hope that all the council members, staff, and the members of the audience, I hope they had a happy Easter Sunday, Easter holiday. I think it was extremely important to have that time off, to be with the family and so forth. And also yesterday, I had the pleasure of joining Councilwoman Basua over at a mobile clinic. They had a Johnson & Johnson vaccination set up over at Oxnard College, or set up by Ventura County Health Department. And it was just great to to work with Salcido from the health department of the city of Oxnard. And also one of the really good pleasures that I had, I met with the traveling nurses. When I was out there, they was in their scrubs, and when I was walking out, it was Martha and I stopped to see because they were having lunch and it was all salad. And I said, well, you guys are really healthy. And then one of the nurses says, sir, who are you? Says, I'm just the mayor of Oxnard. I said, the mayor of Oxnard. And they jump up and down, and they all run over to me. And we said, how about if we take a photo? And we were all getting in line to take a photo. And this one little tiny nurse runs over and says, wait a minute, hold the whole show. I got to get into the photo. But it was just great to see all those traveling nurses. And my understanding that they travel from all over the U.S. to help individuals. And it was just great to see them there. And also this morning I had, or this afternoon, excuse me, I had the pleasure of presenting Marianne Yabulen, Yabolen. She turned 101 years today. And she was really, really happy that I went over with our city employees, and this is the Oxnard Seniors, Oxnard Senior Services. And I just want to share with you, Mr. City Manager, we have some very, very good city employees, not only in this department, but throughout the city. And I just want to commend them, for just a joyous celebration that we had today. So I just wanted to share that it was just really great. 101 years old. And she made a beautiful presentation thanking, the city and also the Oxnard Senior Center Services for giving the big old cake and the presentations, accommodations. But to me, there was such a pleasure, to see this, to be with this joyous celebration. So, and that's all I have. Okay, thank you. Council, did I miss anybody? Okay, thank you. Our next item is the consent item. On the agenda, we have a couple of speakers on that item before we go into the consent. And that I'd like to call him up, and that is Ray Platel, Pat Brown, followed by Douglas Portello. Pat Brown, and this is on the consent items, 1 to 5.
Miss Pat Brown.
This is Pat Brown. Are you ready for me to speak?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to thank the city for getting involved with this bike and pedestrian bikeways and so forth, place for people to walk. Problem was I became aware of 20 years ago when I had 2 neighbors, one on one side and one on the other, that were seniors. And these 2 men had bicycles and they wanted to go to the beach from downtown Oxnard to the beach. And they didn't know where the safe place was for them to get there. And they kept complaining to me about it because they knew I attended city council meetings and such, and they wanted me to do something about it. Well, I tried, but I didn't get very far. But that was 20-some years ago, and now we're finally doing this, and I am just so pleased. These 2 men, if they were still alive, they would just be out there with their bicycles ready to go, ready to test it out. So thank you very much for bringing this up. I know it has been brought up in the past, 10, 15 years. It's been brought up a few times, but it's never gotten this far. And I just wanted to thank you because I know there's all kinds of people who ride bicycles around town that would love to have this available. I'm not one of them because I'm almost 80 years old myself within the next 2 months. And even though I'm in perfect health, still riding a bicycle out to the beach would not be a very smart idea for my age. So anyway, because of my bones and whatnot. So thank you very much for doing this. I greatly appreciate it. And I also agree with all the comments that you've been making. I think those are very apropos of our situation here in Oxnard. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Our next speaker is Douglas Partello. Info consent.
Mr. Partello, you may unmute by pressing *6.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes to speak, sir.
Oh, thank you. The item on that agenda item I'd like to speak on is the CFDs in terms of this reserve study that they're doing on those particular CFDs. I noticed that there are cash reserves in excess of $1 million in each of those. And my question is, why is there such a big reserve? Is that for future specific capital projects or programs that the city may be planning, and that maybe the public could be aware of those and just better informed when there's reserves such as that? Also with the LMDs, there have been big surpluses in some and then deficits in others. So it kind of just brings to question about how is it calculated if the CFD has a increase that for cost that goes into their CFD. Some do, some don't, I understand. And that those costs are based on the previous year's expenditures and contracts, and how much money was needed to make an assessment of what the future coming year could need in terms of funding to keep up the areas as the public involved in those would like to see. So that was just my question on the CFDs about those reserves. Why some have such big ones, others have deficits. I know with the LMDs, I'm not sure about the CFDs. I'm pretty up to speed on the LMDs, but that was just a question that came to mind. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, can you share some information on that item? Steve Hollett.
Mayor Jerry Cooper, project manager, I can actually address that for you. So the landscape maintenance districts throughout the city do not have reserve studies. The community facilities districts, as of this year, all three do have reserve studies. And those reserve balances in excess of $1 million are for various items, including capital projects, seawalls, maintenance. If the speaker takes a look at the staff report, attached are the reserve studies that were provided to make those calculations for reserve balance. And it will show a depreciation scale for each reserved item within those districts. So for example, park amenities and benches have a useful life. And we reserve for those items to be replaced in, let's say, 12 years. That money would come out of the reserves. It would not be levied from for their specific district that year. It would come from the reserves, and then over the next 12-year period, we would begin to build those reserves again for the next stage of replacement. So that information is completely detailed out in each of the reserve studies for the CFDs. We would love to be able to do reserve studies for the LMDs. There are a variety of different reserve balance sizes within the LMDs, and typically we hold on to a reserve balance for capital items. In the LMDs, we have done a number of capital projects over the last 3 years where we have required a substantial reserve balance. So the good rule of thumb is that we'd like to have within reserves is at least 6 months to a year of maintenance costs, as well as any capital improvement items that are required for the district.
Thank you for the explanation. Okay, council members, we have consent items 1 through 5. What is the pleasure of the council? Perella, Councilman Perella, go ahead.
If you're waiting for a motion, I'll wait, but I'll second it for discussion because I have a question on item 3.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
Okay, received comments from individuals, and this wasn't shared with the city, but the question on item 3, Channel Islands Water Quality and Quality Assurance Project Plan. The current methodology has Mandalay Bay paying the highest percentage of costs. Can we explain in a review of the agreements made between the city of Oxnard, the county of Ventura, and the developers of Seabridge and Westport that stated the expansion of the harbor for those developments would result in the need for funds to be made available by those developments to cover the anticipated mitigation costs of water quality issues in the event of the closure of the power plant, as well as providing harbor patrol for all areas north of the bridge. We're speaking of the Channel Islands Bridge. Due to the expansion and additional traffic that would be the result of the expansion, and that those costs would not be borne upon Mandalay Bay. Is there someone who can explain that, or can we pull this off until we get an explanation for that specific question? This I received specifically from one individual, but I do know that there are people in the colony, there are people in Seabridge that have asked specific questions about this matter.
Yeah, we have an explanation. Go ahead. Cooper, Ms. Cooper.
Yes, I can address portions of that question. I have been in conversations with the city attorney's office with regards to the MOUs for Seabridge and Westport that the resident is referencing within the question about the quality assurance project plan. The current methodology was based on a percentage of square footage that including a general fund obligation, with Mandalay Bay being the largest of the districts within the waterways. Additionally, the Mandalay Bay formation documents do speak to water quality issue within them as a contributor to mitigation. So that being said, I know that there were parameters in the MOUs previously with the county that spoke to if the power plant shut down and mitigation. We have been meeting with the city manager and strategizing how to remove the burden, at least for the ABC Labs work from the Oxnard Waterways districts, and that is still currently in discussion. We have not reached out to the residents to negotiate any type of contribution for the next fiscal year at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Council member?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Can the city attorney weigh in? Does he recommend that we pull this item until we get an answer? Ms. Cooper did a tremendous job of explaining here. I appreciate it. But she mentioned that the city attorney's office is looking into it. Are we waiting for some resolution before we take action on this item?
Mr. City Attorney?
That waiting may not bother?
You'll go ahead and share, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you know, these are ongoing issues involving the county and the various communities in the harbor that are not going to come to any quick resolution. So no, we shouldn't wait on this. And a lot of some of the issues raised by the commenter you were speaking for, having to do with harbor patrol issues. I mean, those are choices that have been made by some of the communities to those MOUs themselves, as well as actions by the county regarding those obligations. The city has done what it was required to do under those MOUs in forming the CFDs in the first place.
Council member, the city attorney says we can continue. Are you muted?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I was muted. In other words, Mr. Fisher, City Attorney Fisher, you feel there's no point in waiting on this item?
Correct.
And
thank you very much. Thank you.
Mayor,
Thank you, Mayor.
I see Ms. Cooper has her hand raised. I don't know if she has another
Cooper,
comment.
do you have any additional information?
Yes, I'm sorry, real quick. And just to be clear on this particular item, it is a receive and file item. There is no monetary value connected to the quality assurance project plan. This is a requirement by the state Regional Water Quality Board to allow us to continue the testing that they are currently funding. So this particular item has no monetary value to it. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Just a receive and file then. Thank you. Council member, you okay with that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So again, we need a motion between, item 1 through 5 with the consent.
I'll make the
Move the
motion.
recommended action.
I'll second it.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, it was the first and second by Council Member Perello. Roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Councilmember Perello,
Yes.
Councilmember Basua,
Yes.
Councilmember Madrigal,
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Turan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Our next item is a public hearing, and this is a public hearing, August 6, 2021, Housing Authority, the City Board of Commissioners. At this time and place is set for a public hearing of J1 Housing Department. Subject is a five-year public housing agency plan, annual agency plan, capital fund program CFD, the 5-year action plan for low rent public housing. The recommendations of the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the City of Oxnard, OHA. Number 1, conduct a public hearing to receive comments concerning the second year of a 5-year PHA plan, and 2021 CFP budget, and also a CFP 5-year action plan. And number 2, adopt a resolution. And 2A, approving the 2021 annual agency plan 5-year PH plan for the Housing Authority. 2B, authorizing and directing the chairman to execute the Department of Housing Urban Development HUD Public Housing Agency certification compliance form certifying the housing authorities compliances with HUD's policy and procedures. And 2C, authorizing the housing director to execute and submit all reports, documents, and all their certifications required to comply with HUD's policy and procedures regarding the annual agency plan and 5-year plan. And 2D, approving the 2021 CHP budget, CFP 5-year action plan. And 2E, authorizing the housing director to accept and expend the funds as indicated in the 2021 CFP budget and CFP 5-year action plan. And we start, of course, with the city clerk certification and publication and written communication, if any. Madam Clerk, is there any?
Mayor, there was a legal notice for this public hearing published in Ventura County Vita newspaper on January 14th, 2021, and the city clerk's office has not received any written communication on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, the housing director, Mr. Ramirez, is in accordance with Measure M, posted in the video presentation regarding this item, is available to answer any questions or any clarification questions that a council member might have at this time. Any council members have any concerns or items they'd like to expend at this time? And we did not have any public individuals on this item.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I do have one comment.
Okay.
More of a comment to Mr. Ramirez. I know that HUD budgets are very constrained, but I was hoping that maybe next year you and your staff can actually put some money into or look for grants for security, maybe even to pay for an officer. It's just food for thought, and hoping that you can hopefully be able to fund additional police for some of the public housing units with HUD funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We will do that. We are actually working on an agreement right now for security at Squires or at Pleasant Valley and at Colonia.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
I'm going to open the public hearing, and just to share with you, I do not have any speakers at this time. And Mr. Ramirez, do you have a presentation you'd like to share at this time? No?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then, does the council members have any questions on this item at this time? Okay, council member or Commissioner Teran.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ramirez, just real quickly, thank you for the presentation and the work that you and your staff have put on this. I noticed in the staff report and the attachments that there were some comments and questions from residents around some specific items that they had as areas of concern. And I noted that some of them were deferred due to COVID. And I'm just wondering if there is some kind of timeline or estimate on when revisiting those concerns or issues will happen as we move into the orange tier and things continue to improve.
First of all, Councilman, thank you for the question. The process that we undertook this year that led up to this action happens every year. So every year we go through a process to identify the improvements that are necessary or that we would like to undertake or the residents would require or request via the capital fund. Regarding COVID specifically, there was some funding that was offered to the housing authorities for COVID response. It was mostly, almost entirely about operations versus improvements to the sites. We did use those funds to allow us to operate remotely, to improve those kinds of Section 8 and public housing operations, but they were not used for site improvements. The capital fund, which is what this is, the CFP, that's what that means, is the fund that is used for site improvements. And so we do this every year.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't have any other speakers on this item, so I'm gonna close the public hearing at this time. And council members, any other questions or we need a motion to approve this item? Councilman Perrello or Commissioner Perrello.
I'll make a motion to approve, but I do have a question of Mr. Ramirez.
Go ahead.
The question that Mr. Teran asked, if there were questions specifically asked that were not addressed, is that a problem going forward, or do we need to answer all the questions that were addressed? In the report, Mr. Teran mentioned that because of the COVID, they could not be addressed. Is that a requirement that all the questions be addressed?
The questions have been addressed, but I'm not sure that, I think that what Councilman Teran was referring to is that some of the residents are asking that we undertake certain improvements, which we cannot do. We cannot address those improvements at this time. We are going to plan for them in the future, but they're not happening now.
Okay, then I understand it then. Thank you very much. Thank you. You answered my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we got a first by Commissioner Perrello. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Teran. Roll call.
The city clerk does have an announcement.
Okay.
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54952.3, each member of the Housing Board of Commissioners present will receive a $50 pay for convening this meeting. Roll call. Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello.
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Madrigal.
Yes.
Councilmember Teran.
Yes.
Councilmember Basua.
Aye.
Commissioner Vega.
Yes.
Commissioner Andrade.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, commissioners. Our next
Thank
item
you.
is,
You're welcome, John.
thank you. Okay, our next item is a Public Works item, and this is an update on the Renew Oxnard Community Outreach Program and Collaborative Government Guide for the city's landscape maintenance district. And of course, the recommendation the City Council receive and file the staff report and update regarding the Renew Oxnard Community Outreach Program and Collaborative Governance Guide for the City Landscaping Maintenance District. And before we continue, I have three speakers that'd like to speak on this item. And it's Ray Platel, Alicia Partel, and Douglas Partello. Ray Platel. And before they start, again, this is was recorded under Measure M, video.
Mr. Portillo. Mr. Portillo, you may unmute by pressing star
Yes.
6.
Hello?
Yes, hi. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, I thought they had called Ray, but I'll go ahead.
Yeah, Portello was the last one, but we can go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I had spoke previously and had asked, and I'd just like to ask each council member whether they will make a motion or possibly give a second to releasing the LMD admin fee audit. I think as we move forward with programs such as Renew and to improve our landscaping, because NBS has determined that they did a survey and the satisfaction rate with our landscaping is really horrible, and we can see why. And so I understand the need for this issue being addressed because it's something that affects all of our Oxnardians and people who enter the city and see our city and our landscaping, that the Renew project, for it to move forward and for people to buy into some of the things that are being proposed, we've still got a lot of unresolved questions and problems that still exist. And I think that would be a good first step. So Pablo and Danielle have a very difficult job to try to sell folks on the Renew project. And we're talking about volunteerism, CAGs, CFDs, consolidating LMDs into CFDs, which in other words, mellow roost taxes, which I think everybody's pretty unfavorable about that idea. But there are so many unresolved issues. And the reasoning given for not releasing that admin audit were that it was a item that is a, just to be, exemption for the item. But this is an item that's the audit that's retained. So only items that aren't retained would follow in that exemption that was cited for that not being released. Also, it was cited attorney-client privilege. Well, this contract for NBS that included the admin fee audit, that was initiated through NIHOF. And that did not go through the city attorney's office. That actually went through Michael
40
Moore.
seconds.
So, that argument doesn't seem to hold up when you read the actual contracts. So I think that this is something that, if we can clear the air, get it out there, as painful as it may be, because the whole thing is a big mess, and the way it was managed, the admin fees and the appropriateness of, how much admin fees were charged and where that money went, and how invoices were handled with contractors. There are just so many unanswered questions that I think first we need to take that first step and just be transparent, be accountable. And that's for what's done in the past, but we're here now.
Your time is
So
up, sir.
if we could just get that admin fee.
Thank you, Councilman Pereira. We got two more speakers and then we'll come back to.
Yes, but Mayor, can I address that, please? I've
Go ahead.
explained to the gentleman. This item was heard in closed session years back on a 5-member council. It was asked to be brought out in public and it lost on a 3-2 vote. Oscar Madrigal and myself voted to bring it out, but we lost. That's the rules of the road. You lose. Now there are 4 brand new council members on this council that have never heard this item. When I discussed it with our city attorney, Mr. Fisher, basically he laid out the common sense approach, and he's absolutely, in my opinion, correct. You're not going to blindside 4 brand new individuals on the council, throw something in front of them without explaining what it is. And we can't talk about it among ourselves unless it's an item in closed session or in public. And to blindside 4 council members hang them out to dry, I will not agree on. I've explained that to Mr. Bertello, and I've explained it to others that have asked that. The city attorney has informed me that if any of us ask to have the item heard in closed session, we can, and that would be the process. If we hear it in closed session and somebody wants to bring it out, they can. I'd make a motion to hear it in closed session, but I don't know if that's the right time now. I'll wait for the attorney to address that. But Mayor, thank you for letting me explain that, because this baby, the story isn't changing, but it's getting spun real bad.
This is not item on the agenda. Is that Mr. City Attorney? It's
Yeah,
not on the agenda.
that is not this item. Mr. Partello is raising a different issue related to
this item.
Well, not related to this item, but related to something that happened 4 years ago that the council made a determination on 4 years ago.
Okay. So our next speaker is Ray Platel, followed by Alicia Purcell.
Mr.
Ray.
Platel?
Ray.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and city staff and public. It seems to me that the real problem was and is the city's mismanagement of the LMDs on multiple fronts, allowing specific districts to exhaust all of their funds and doing nothing proper about it, allowing specific districts to run substantial reserves and again doing nothing proper about it, allowing some districts or parcels to not pay anything at all, not properly monitoring the work being done which the city contracted for, etc. This all boils down to city mismanagement. It seems that this can be rectified without resorting to other forms of specific district financing such as CFDs. As a matter of fact, this was elaborated at the December 2020 City NDS kickoff. But now you are leaning to persuade the residents of certain LMDs to convert to CFDs, to shift the outcomes of your mismanagement onto the shoulders of homeowners, in addition to potentially slapping them with more responsibilities such as streets, water, sewage and drainage, electricity, infrastructure, schools, parks, and police protection. And speaking of NBS, why can't the city resolve this problem without external help? NDS has been around for over 5 years now, and this still hasn't been resolved. This LMD thing seems to be a good career move for NBS. It never seems to end. NBS even generated an operations manual and trained city staff, yet they're still here. In addition to paying NBS with LMD funds, which by the way are for district maintenance only and not for outsourced studies, the districts are also paying the city to manage or mismanage LMDs and their funds, hence the issue. That being said, it appears the big issue is a lack of maintenance of the general benefit areas rather than the maintenance of the interiors of the district boundaries. The general benefit areas are the responsibility of the city. The city claims insufficient budget, yet you dole out money to salaries and benefits like there's no tomorrow. But now you have Measure E. Your budget shortfall argument has certainly lost steam. With this new money source, will the situation in the general benefit areas get better? Time will tell. But remember, the public is watching. Proposition 13 and 218 may limit your ability to collect taxes for the maintenance of city maintained areas. However, these two props do not limit or control where or how you allocate the tax dollars that you do collect. It is and was your choice to allow the general benefit areas of our city to deteriorate due to neglect.
40
You
seconds.
chose where to allocate. Let's talk about some of the content of the collaborative governance guidance for the Special Districts Division, which again was generated with probable illegal use of LMD monies. According to the survey, 67% of the residents believe LMD funds are being used for purposes other than the maintenance of their specific areas. They're probably 100% correct. And I only have a few seconds left. So I was going to tell you or mention some of the comments that residents have written at the survey. I'll just read one on page 15. We wouldn't even be having this discussion if you use the money assessed for landscaping properly.
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you. Alicia Purcell.
Alicia Purcell?
I'm here.
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I have spoken at 2 prior meetings about my belief that it's not legal for the city to be making the LMDs pay for the cost of the contract for this Renew Oxnard program. This project diverts LMD funds dedicated to performing actual maintenance of the landscaping. I previously pointed you to a relevant statute in section 22655 of the Streets and Highways Code. And in describing the annual LMD levy and collection process, it puts tight restrictions on use of these funds. This section says, and I quote, "The money shall be expended only for the improvements authorized for such district," end quote. Yet you're using these monies for another purpose, and I don't believe it complies with the law. The city's response to my prior complaint was just to assert that these expenditures are for the improvements in the district. I did not get an opportunity to rebut that. This program proposes to residents that they form Melrose districts, often called community facility districts, CFDs, that will include areas which are not currently within the boundaries of any LMD. Using LMD funds to support areas outside the boundaries of the LMD does not seem to comply with the requirement to use the LMD monies only for improvements authorized for such district. The program proposes that the CFDs include the outer perimeters of the neighborhoods, which are a general fund obligation. It proposes to add new neighborhoods that don't now have an LMD. This is not proper use of LMD funds. Another part of the sales pitch being given to residents about the alleged wonders of Melrose districts is they could be used to maintain improvements that legally can't be maintained by LMD funds, things like speed bumps, even street maintenance. So if it's not legal to use LMD funds to pay for those things now, why is it legal to use LMD funds to form a CFD to pay for those things? It's pretty easy to see that this project exceeds the scope of the purpose for which the LMDs were formed. So the LMDs should not be paying for it. As others have said, the city has a long history of using the LMDs and improperly using the funds. And while some steps have been taken to end those past practices, many residents were never made whole for many years of improper charges.
40 seconds.
And to date, the city continues to hide from the public the audit related to the admin fees. So I have to disagree with this written staff report, which pretends that there has been transparency and accountability. And the new charges for the Renew Oxnard program seem to be a new problem that you're creating here. So can't the city just do the right thing on its own and stop misusing the LMD funds, without lawyers having to get involved? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have some comments from a city attorney, and then our city manager, and then we'll go to our council member. City attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. So the expenses that are being discussed here are incidental to the ongoing determinations that need to be made under the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972 regarding the districts. Staff cannot prepare the annual reports or conduct any needed assessment-related elections unless they know what it is the property owners want, and we're engaging them through the Renew Oxnard program to determine what it is that they want, whether that means staying with the status quo of the services that they've been getting, increasing their assessments, or going through a change of organization to annex territory, detach territory, combine with another district, or dissolve their district. And in order for the property owners to make informed decisions, they need to understand those options, as well as alternative district structures that might meet their needs. So there are other provisions of the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972 that include incidental expense definitions and allowances that bring in these sort of incidental issues to what are these procedures and proceedings so that the districts can really meet their purposes that were there upon formation. They get to the heart of the maintenance of the improvements that are there already. So Mr. Perez can speak to that more. Ms. Cooper can speak to that more, but City Manager, do you have something to add?
Okay, well, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, I'd like to address especially Mr. Partello's and Mr. Blotel's comments, because I think there's a lot of sort of, in addition to their current frustrations with City Hall, I think there's also overlapping residual frustration about past practices / mismanagement. And much of that I know has been well documented. But what we're trying to do here is go forward, because these facilities, these districts actually need to evolve because the world has evolved beyond their original creation. So with regard to saying that, the city has a long history, on this case, we know that it's been documented. We've done many things to correct it. I want to remind the council and the public that back in 2017, the city actually authorized the general fund payment of $2.93 million back to the various assessment districts to eliminate the negative fund balances in those districts. So the city's taken corrective action in terms of the funding, but also in terms of sorting out how to better, more accurately and more transparently manage the districts, allocate the funding and the projects. The key issue is, and hopefully Mr. Perez will discuss it later when he has a chance to speak, in terms of the original formation of many of our LMDs and the rules at the time and the rules that hold them tied to the past and therefore unable to meet the needs of today. But I would like to give a few examples with specific to those LMDs that when they were formed, they did not include an escalator. So in other words, a built-in way to increase the assessments to simply to keep up with inflation. So if you simply adjust these LMDs assessments for inflation, what you'll find, and there are a couple of these LMDs, specifically Waterways Mandalay Zone 1 and Waterways Harbor Island Zone 2, those were formed in 1970, and their assessments are stuck in those dollars. But if you adjust it for inflation, it actually would be 6.78 times higher today in terms of the dollars. So they are woefully unfunded. And then many of our other ones that have no escalator, so Mandalay Beach Colony / Hotel, Oxnard Boulevard Highway 101 Interchange, Rice Avenue, River Ridge, Country Club Estates, San Tropez, Standard Pacific, California Cove, California Lighthouse, Le Village, I think that's supposed to sound French, Greystone, LMD 24 Vineyards, and so on. On average, those, once you adjust those for inflation, it's the cost, it should be twice the amount that they're currently being assessed. So in essence, what this means is, especially for those districts, what they collect each year can't possibly pay for what's needed to maintain their LMDs, because the price of everything has gone up over the years and the decades, whether it's labor, fuel, the cost of the lawnmowers and other equipment. So what this effort is to have these open discussions with all of those residents and to provide actual options. There's been a lot of misleading misinformation about that we're trying to force everything to become a CFD, right? I've read comments that all roads lead to Melrose. They do not. They might lead to Melrose Place, but not to Melrose. We are providing options here. So another way to frame this is to say, some of these LMDs, it's akin to like they bought a Yugo in 1970, and that's what they still have, and it doesn't work very well anymore. So there are options out there that we're presenting. And the options could be you increase a little bit and you upgrade to a Toyota, or perhaps you want the full service and you upgrade to a Cadillac, your choice. Or you don't, you keep the Yugo, and perhaps that means once a month the neighbors get out there and help push it along. So these are all the choices being presented. We're not trying to force anything down any neighborhood's throat. They get to choose, but they need to choose knowing clearly what all the consequences are for their choices, but also knowing what they get from the various choices. Thank you.
So, Mr. Perez, does he have any comments you'd like to share?
Yes, good evening. Mayor and the members of the council. How much time do you have? Because I can actually cover this extensively for at least 2 hours.
Well, how about a couple of 2-3 minutes?
Okay, so the districts were the districts were formed as a request by the developer. We're dealing with assessment districts that are new developments throughout the city from the 1970s through the 2000s. They were formed as a way to mitigate the impact costs on the of those developments to the city. The city currently has 39 active maintenance assessment districts, and they originally had maintained both the interior and the exterior landscaping. And when I mean interior, I mean inside of the neighborhood. Exterior will be on the medians, parkways, the perimeter. After the audit that was mentioned a couple of times here, we did a couple of audits. One, the admin fees audit that was discussed, and also a full audit of the program. The exterior improvements were removed from the districts. That was a big problem then. They are very general benefit driven. So that was turned over to the Parks Division in 2017 or so. However, it is important to note, as I have noted in all the meetings of Renew Oxnard with residents, that by design, the way that these developments came to occur about, the property owners to these assessment districts were to pay the landscaping for the improvements in the interior and the exterior. So though today that is not the case, it's only paying for the interior, it is important to note that the original placement of that financial responsibility was passed on to the property owners by the developer when all these districts were formed. I understand that Measure E funds may be available, and that has come up of a lot of our meetings, which is why we have offered that maybe some of the solutions may be something that has a sunset, 5 to 7 years, to give Measure E funding time to occur for the landscaping. There is no indication whatsoever. I have been extremely clear at every meeting. And in fact, they're all recorded. You can listen to this in our YouTube channel. We are not trying to push any CFD for any community. And in fact, that is the hardest, most difficult option of all. To get a CFD approved, a Melrose, will require 2/3 approval by the registered voters casting ballots in that neighborhood, right? That's extremely hard to do, especially because Melrose don't have a good name. People don't like them. So in fact, we have actually been asking residents to organize, to form a citizen committee that we will support. We'll provide all the outreach documents, all the material, so they can go out, reach out, meet with their neighbors, and decide if they want to maybe have an HOA to cover the improvements, have some nonprofit organization be involved, have a group like the Doug Partello group to help with the improvements, with the maintenance of those improvements. We're 100% supportive of that. In fact, we prefer that over anything else. But for some reason, yes, there has been some miscommunication, and this has been taken as a way for us to push CFDs. And frankly, that is a very uphill battle. So we'll take a break there and let you guys have some questions.
Thank you for that explanation. And again, one of the things you're showing that the people are going to have an option eventually as to what route to go, whether it's a CFD, Melrose, whatever you want to call it. They have that potentially with committees that could be placed together, by this particular neighborhoods. We have a council member, Tehran, that'd like to share some information. Tehran, council member.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I have quite a few questions. First and foremost, thank you, Mr. Perez, for being here, and thank you, Ms. Cooper, for your work on this as well. A really quick clarifying question for the city attorney. Would it be a violation of the Brown Act to request that 4-year-old report be reviewed in closed session at this particular time? If a council member were to make that motion, would it be a violation of the Brown Act for us to discuss that right now?
Well, I think as I've stated in prior meeting, the council has a procedure for how an item reaches an agenda. So the request has clearly been made. That's right. So now it goes to the city manager to put it on a committee agenda to see if that moves forward, and then goes to the council if the committee recommends.
And that was stated initially. Yep.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that so that the public can hear that there's nothing being avoided. There's a proper procedure for this, as we want to be sure to do it all correctly. And some people have the DA on speed dial, so we want to make sure that we're good on that. Thank you for that. So looking at this, I want to thank you, Mr. Perez, again. I looked through the report and saw a lot of really good information on the past efforts for this and kind of where we are now. I want to point out that I see this as someone who is all about community engagement and getting residents involved in what's going on in their communities and in the city. Really, this is one of the first major ways I've seen the city, even through a consultant, do just targeted, intentional outreach to the residents on a large scale to get them involved, to make a decision that affects their neighborhood, their own community. And I went back to the Civic Mike website and I watched the presentations that were done by the consultant for residents. And I did take notes, and I appreciate the work that's gone into it, and I appreciate the residents who came out. What I want to mention, though, first and foremost to the public, I want to apologize that you can't see a presentation tonight on this. I tried letting folks know that they can see it posted ahead of time. If they didn't see that, I apologize. If you're here watching this, you can't see that video tonight. It would be a violation of Measure M for us to show it. And looking at the video, unfortunately, there were 80 views, 80, which I guess is better than what we usually get on those videos. But according to the report, there were 2,939 lots in our LMDs that we have across the city. So almost 3,000 lots with multiple people living or homeowners. And we have 80 views for this. So I hope people will get involved and get active with this. That being said, this is a way to engage property owners to make this decision. And I think I was going to mention this, but it's already been stated that based on what I saw by watching the actual meetings that happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Perez, but it sounds like people who can get involved in this, unique to their neighborhood, each individual neighborhood can decide, do we want to do nothing at all and leave things as is?
Yes.
Do we want to increase our levies that we get to get us more levels of service? Do we want to form a CFD? Do we want to dissolve everything? Is that correct about what kinds of options they have?
Yes, that's the kind of options they have. In fact, what we have asked is that the Citizens Committee that's actually been formed, so post those meetings that you saw, we have had meetings with the volunteers. As you know, in those meetings, we ask for volunteers for the Citizens Committee, and we have volunteers that we're working with currently. In every team, which is made of multiple LMDs, is going many different directions, right? Because there's a lot of flavors. You can use a HOA, you can do a nonprofit, you can do nothing and let the district continue to, in essence, decline because, as stated previously, many have fixed rates. So the next increase of a water rate is just going to put them below F level, which is really the worst you can have. So at some point, some of them we may just dissolve because there's no purpose in having them anymore. But they have all these options. All of it will be decided by the Citizens Committee and the residents, not by the city, not by MBS, not by Civic Mike staff, and have made it extremely clear that us as Civic Mike, we're not moving forward with the formation of a CFD, for example, unless they can bring back proof that they can obtain that 2/3 approval. And I say that because forming a Melrose costs thousands of dollars that these communities don't have. We have also made a point that we're not meeting further with any community. In fact, there are 3 teams that we have not met further with because they did not participate highly, significantly in the survey that we posted in January and February. If there's no participation, we're not spending their money, right? Because participation is key. Without it, we can't make the decision for them. The city can't make the decision. They have to make the decision. So that's how we have approached the program. But you're correct, yes.
Councilman Perella, can I ask Mr. Perez a quick question? If they vote, if a neighborhood votes, do they have to go through the actual Ventura County Elections Office? Would it be an actual election?
If it's a Melrose that you're trying to form, right? Again, there are many, many options that don't require a vote like that. But if this community says, okay, we are an elder community, right? Yeah. We don't want to be outside doing anything. We don't have a nonprofit that we know. We do not want an HOA because that's another story, right? They're similar to Melrose. People don't like HOA. Some don't. Then they say, no, we just rather pay for it. We want the city to do it all. Run a budget, tell us how much it's going to cost. And yes, in that case, it's going to go through a full formation process by the law, and it's going to require the city to do a mail ballot or through the county register of voters.
That's exactly right. Because we've done a CFD before, but I was the
Correct.
supervisors,
Yeah.
and you do require a ballot, and potentially a mail-in ballot.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Councilmember, my apologies. Go ahead.
My apologies if I can take just another minute or two on this. I just finished through my notes here. Thank you, Mr. Perez, for that response. And, the last couple things on here, it was very insightful. I hope that the members of the public who are watching this now or watch this recorded later on will go to the Civic Mike website or to their YouTube channel and see the previous meetings, because they actually laid it out pretty well on what's going on and what the options are. And one example I'll use, I know the city manager touched on this a little bit. There's one LMD who I believe off the top of my head was paying $88 a year back in 1987 and continues to pay that amount today in 2021. And in 1987 money, that was like $200 a year when you adjust it for inflation. But I mean, it's $88 a year in 2021 money. I mean, can you imagine if you're making $8 an hour back in 1987, you're doing pretty well. If you're still making $8 an hour now, yeah, it's not going to cut it. So that's really what people have to think about, is how much are they willing to pay or for the level of service that they're expecting. So the last question I have is, it was mentioned about funding the consultant from the LMD. Is that legal? I know the city attorney already spoke to that. There was a specific section that was called out, and I apologize, I didn't write it down quick enough. But I just want to ensure as a council member, is what we're doing here legal? If by paying a consultant out of the LMDs, we're in the clear on that, right? And there's nothing illegal about this, or is it a gray area? Like, where are we with that?
Mr. City Attorney.
So the section cited was Streets and Highways Code section 22569, and subdivision A says that the costs that are allowed to be used include all incidental expenses. So the definition sections of the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972 include that incidental expenses include all of the following: the cost of preparation of reports, including plans, specifications, estimates, diagrams, and assessments. So, and it has several other aspects there, including costs associated with any elections held for the approval of a new or increased assessment. So there's even a definition of the term include, and it means that it's without limitation. So this is a necessary step in getting to the procedures necessary for the residents to determine what they want to do with their district. So the outreach is required in order to determine, are they going to keep up with the level of assessment that they've been paying? Are they going to increase it? Are they going to change the type of improvements? So to the extent there may be, I don't know, wrought iron fencing, are they going to let that just deteriorate and go away? Are they going to raise their assessments to replace it? These are the steps in the process that Mr. Perez was speaking about.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. And thank you for the extended amount of time on that.
Yeah. Councilmember Perella.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the public that spoke on this. I want to thank the comments that have been made. But I think the bottom line, Councilmember Tehran, common sense, nailed it. If you made $8 an hour back in the past and you made $8 an hour, is it any different? If you made $8 an hour and one of these dates was in the 70s, what did a gallon of gas cost in the 1970s? What does a gallon of gas cost now? What did a hamburger at McDonald's cost in the 70s and now? Now, that doesn't matter with the people that are asking questions, but it's a bit of common sense and we're touching reality. I happen to live in a landscape maintenance district. I don't know if any of the others, I think the mayor may, but this does not cover the entire city. This is only specific areas in the city. These are agreements that were made with developers because they wanted specific accommodations for the project, and they wanted to avoid having to pay the full freight. And if you bought a house in that area, there was disclosure and you became aware of it. There have been some excellent things, and I appreciate the questions, and I appreciate our city attorney, Mr. Fisher, the answers about incidentals, because the public speakers are bringing out good questions. But as this city council and the residents of the city are well aware, anybody can sue anybody. And this may end up, as Councilman Madrigal said, not Madrigal, Turan said, some people are on speed dial with various entities. The items that come up, there has been no pressure from the individuals, Mr. Pablo Perez and the organization he's with, to make residents do certain things. But residents are raising Cain that their areas are looking bad. They're not willing to listen to what the information is given. This is a classic case, I believe, of killing the messenger. You're trying to kill the people from the city of Oxnard staff that are bringing you this information, and you're trying to kill the messenger, not literally kill. You are raising Cain with them. The people that are bringing the message, the facts. Some people want to listen to the facts and some don't. I admit there are times I don't like the facts, but I'd rather have the facts and the truth than be surprised. And along with that, yes, I will admit there were things that were done in the past that were wrong. Some of them may have been honest mistakes. Some of them may not. There's an audit. There's very big questions and very good questions about things. We'll see what the council decides. I appreciate Councilman Turan again asking for that item. There's apparently a process, and I intend to tomorrow put the request in to get it into committee to come forward with this audit. The issues with respect to what do people want? I hear stories from people saying, I've spent all this money over these years. The residential area that I live in looks like crap. I want my money back. Well, I think to myself, if you ever went to a restaurant and you ate the meal and, you know, it was okay, it was so-and-so, and 6 months later you come back and you decided it wasn't good, you want your money back? It doesn't work that way. But the other thing is, the next day you're going to be hungry. What you learn from your experience, you may not go back to that restaurant. What you learned from the experience on this, do you want the outside or the areas that are these districts fund? Do you want them to look sharp? People do like to have their property values as high as they can. Do you want them to look sharp, or do you want them to be as inexpensive as possible? And when they become inexpensive as possible, it is the opposite of looking sharp. I appreciate all the work that's going in, that's involved in this, and the people that have been chewed up and spit out that work for the city of Oxnard trying to get information and answers to people. But some people will not listen to the facts. And you have every right in the world to do that, but it matters because they got to think facts matter. Facts matter. And, you know, I appreciate this presentation. There's been no one that I know of has asked to have everything in a Mello-Roos. People use scare tactics. It's like yelling fire in a crowded theater. People do everything to get stirred up. I am aware of one neighborhood that had a tremendously large meeting. I'm aware of another neighborhood, they barely got a dozen people. This is, you know, and I appreciate the question again. How many, and before I'm done, Mr. Perez, how many neighborhoods have Mello-Rooses? And mind you, there are 50 neighborhoods in the city of Oxnard. Not every neighborhood has a Mello-Roos, as a landscape or a community facilities district, but not Mello-Roos. But some neighborhoods have multiple ones. This is getting blown up into a big thing to, like, you know, let's pile on the council. The council wasn't here when this was done. The council's got to do with it. Let's, you know, do something to the council or the management of the city. This is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying to make your city better. They're trying to make your city better. And with respect to that, I do have a question from a resident that lives in the harbor area. They want to know if the fees for the consultant are broken down by each area. Is there a way that they can go and check, Seabridge pays this much, Mandalay Bay pays this much, La Village pays this much. Is it broken down that way? And those are my comments. And Mayor, thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, Mrs. Cooper, can you answer the questions? Are the fees separated?
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember Perello. So within the contract for Renew Oxnard, it is detailed out that there is a not to exceed amount for engaged communities of $15,000 for the community outreach. Now, that does not mean that that full $15,000 may be used. If we had a landscape maintenance district that participated in the initial community meeting, but has not elected to move on to our smaller community team meetings, they would not be charged some additional fees. With regards to the community member that submitted that question, that particular district is not, Mandalay Bay is not involved in the current community outreach for Renew Oxnard. Mandalay Bay has their own separate contract for their seawalls issue with regards to community outreach and potential formation of a new assessment district.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Cooper. And Mayor, one last question, please.
Yes. Go ahead.
If the residents decide to do nothing and their annual fees eventually are exhausted, and one of the costs that the city manager mentioned, all the costs and things go up, one of them is water. If we cannot generate the funds from those fees to water the trees, trim the trees, cut the grass, eventually, if the area dies, who inherits that property? Who takes ownership of that property? If it becomes a blight, does it come on the residents that live in that district, or does it fall on the city of Oxnard?
So if
That's my last question. Thank you.
If the district does not generate funds to sustain itself, then what would happen would be the staff would come back to city council and recommend dissolving the district, and then it would become part of general fund maintenance and subject to the ebbs and flows of the general fund. So as we saw in the past with general fund budget cuts, that's why we saw some deterioration of medians and exterior improvements because general fund couldn't afford that. Having a landscape maintenance district or in this case, a resident organization come together to develop a strategy for the maintenance of their neighborhood ensures that their neighborhood will continue to look beautiful, their home values will stay at a higher level, and they will be happy with their maintenance, regardless of if it is a landscape maintenance district, community facilities district, or that residential volunteer group. And one thing I did want to mention as well is that we have had a approximate total of over 120 additional views to both the initial community outreach meeting and the individual team meetings that Civic Mike has posted on their website. And keep in mind, we did during the community outreach process observe that many people were coming together in a household with other neighbors to watch those movies. The presentations and videos. So I estimate that views from residents have been higher than what the stats from YouTube do show, but we have approximately 120 additional views from our post-meeting videos that have been up on the site.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you very much.
The city manager would like to share some
Yes,
additional information.
Mr. Mayor. Ms. Cooper, thank you for that. Ms. Cooper is a very good public servant and always wants to do the right thing. I'm going to post-edit part of her answer. And the reason is this. And as Mr. Perez alluded to earlier, these particular districts were established as part of the development agreement process for these neighborhoods. So what we can't do, and what I wouldn't recommend, unless and until the city has more revenue than we need, which I don't see occurring anytime in the near future, we can't have a situation where neighborhoods that were created, built, developed with these districts in mind specifically to take care of the landscaping. We can't allow them to be left to get into disarray and then pick up the tab. If you think about that could be all of the modern developments that are required to maintain the common areas. So that's not a good practice that I would recommend. This is why we're providing these options so that people can choose the mix of different ways to approach maintaining these neighborhoods, again, that they were built with these districts as a requirement. And all that information in theory, passed on every time a property is sold. It's all disclosed. Thank you.
Mr. Perez, I know that Councilman Perello mentioned something that I belong to a LMD, if you want to call it, but when I bought that property, I bought it with the disclosures that I had to pay for that we had to maintain the property, that not only the landscaping, but also the color of the house and the type of roof and so forth. So my concern that I have, even though those individuals say we're going to let those areas go in disrepair, they need to take some responsibility. Some disclosures that were signed initially when those properties were bought, and that when they sell the property, that disclosure and those HOAs and those obligations are conveyed with the public as they sell. So I think what we need to do here is probably, as mentioned before, we have, I think, 3,000 homes under the different conditions and LMDs or CFDs, whatever you want to call them. But I think we need to convey this information to the public. I think the councilman mentioned that they need to know their responsibilities, and they have choices, they have options they can share the options is, do we continue adding more dollars to the LMDs, or do we let it go? I don't think the option of letting it go is a good option at all, because then the rest of the city has to pick up the difference, which is not good. But I think that we need to convey that information. And as I mentioned initially, one of the good ways of doing it is to conveying this information, like, and again, I want to go back to Councilman Tehran, that we had that the town hall meeting and have this type of explanation explained to those individuals that are affected by this choices. So, but I think, and I'm going to thank you, Mr. President. I think that was a good explanation, and also Ms. Cooper, good explanation, and again, our city attorney and city manager. Any other, Ms. Cooper, do you have additional information?
Just a quick note on the community outreach part as well. Mr. Perez and I will be at the INCO meeting tomorrow night to answer questions from residents, both in landscape maintenance districts and outside landscape maintenance districts, about the Renew Oxnard program and how they can get involved with beautifying their neighborhood.
That's excellent. Very, very good. Council members, any other questions? I know this is a receive and file. It's a good explanation, and what is the pleasure of the board?
Add a comment if that's okay.
Read the escrow document. They didn't read.
Mr. Perez?
Yes, if you don't mind, if I could have just a couple more minutes, I wanted to address.
Go ahead.
Is that okay? I heard some comments that I would like to address from the public earlier, and maybe it will be helpful. In the meetings, and I know when you watch them, you'll see this part, we do introduce the idea that if you are pursuing a Melrose, this is for those communities that want to do that, right? They will have the opportunity to capture the improvements on the exterior, the general benefit items, right? The parkways and the mediums and the perimeter. Mm-hmm. They also have the opportunity to add new improvements like street resurfacing, sidewalks, or anything they may want to do. Again, this is the committee working in that community, right? Making those decisions, because we'll run models and budgets and see what the rate is like. And they may say yes or no. In no way whatsoever, we're trying to do what our previous speaker said, which was to force new improvements and shift the responsibility from the city to the residents. This is just an opportunity. If you're already going through the process of forming a CFD, you might as well open the book and see what else is there. I just want to clarify that in phase one of this effort, which includes about 16 districts, there are closer to 3,900 parcels that we have sent flyers, postcards, surveys, trying to get them to the meetings. But in totality, all the 39 assessment districts have closer to 8,000 parcels. So that's the full gamut of parcels. But yes, the videos, maybe the viewership is not as high. However, we do have hundreds of subscribers to our website that receive emails when we create new stories and posts. So there's actually some good participation going on, as well as the committees that are being formed and moving forward. A couple more comments that I think are worth clarifying. Our fees, right? As Jerry explained, we only bill for what would incur. And in fact, we stop immediately the moment that we don't see participation. For example, Pacific Cove, LMD 50 and LMD 54. We have not gone further with them because there hasn't been enough participation since the December meeting. So we're not invoicing this $403,000 amount that we keep seeing in social media. So that is just not happening. We're not even close to that. That assumes that 27 districts will have been engaged to the full extent and that we have spent the whole contract amount. So that's we're not even close to that at all. Furthermore, there's some comments out there about this $403,000 coming from the levies this year, meaning that the $1.4 million in assessments included the 403. Therefore, money was taken that could have been used for improvements. That's absolutely not true. If that had happened, you will have seen an incredible drop on what's already bad service, right? Because 403,000 out of 1.4 million is a large amount. In fact, the amount that was pulled from the levies was only about $37,000 that was included from the levies. And the full amount was $50,000 for the year, which is really coming from surplus funds, the funds they have in hand. We in no way whatsoever are trying to take whatever little bit of money's there to for this effort. It doesn't make any sense. And in fact, there are districts that we wish to engage, but they don't have funding for it. So that was my last comment. I just want to clarify that is just not happening at all.
So, Mr. President, you're saying that the fees are only as needed.
Correct.
You don't charge. You don't. It's a not ongoing fees as needed. Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, council members, any additional questions? Okay. Councilman Perrella?
Yes. There was a recent vote in Seabridge that ended up, the one thing that was real obvious and has become is the lack of now the Harbor Patrol. Did they rescind with the vote all of their fees? How can we have somebody explain exactly what transpired there?
So, Councilmember Perrella, that has, and Ms. Cooper can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that has anything to do with the Renew Oxnard outreach program.
I know, but it was mentioned that we don't want people to do that, and it has had a tremendous impact with whatever that vote was. What can we have somebody explain either the differences or the similarities, please?
So Councilmember Perrella, that does not have anything really to do with the Renew Oxnard program, and in this situation, it was a ballot initiative. That's to right. Remove Harbor Patrol services from that CFD.
From the time. And that's, Ms. Cooper, that's not agendized either, so we need to be careful about that too.
Yep.
So the parallel to this agenda item would be that if residents decide that they want to cut the level of assessment that's being used to pay for a particular level of service, that level of service will go down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council members, again, this item was approved by the Public Works Transportation by 3-0. So we're good. File and receipt. So do we have to vote on this item? We don't. Okay, if we don't, then that's the last item and on the agenda. So we are adjourned. Thank you. Mm-hmm.